So, without further ado, Reverend Jim Rosemergy, his beautiful wife Nancy, we just want to give him a nice warm welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. I've been sitting here facing in this direction. Now I get to look out and see all the beautiful faces and the people that are here. I want to thank you for the invitation to come. And, we just met Reverend Cindy just a little while ago. But what a radiant smile she has and presence. Don't you want to give her a big hand? Maybe we'll meet again. Who knows? And I want to thank Patricia and Dave Wagner for being our host and hostess at their home. We are nothing but trouble. We are vegan, and Patricia was like this, but it was like a 5-star restaurant there. If you ever get an opportunity to spend some time at their house, to eat and whatever else, wander around the yard, it's just magnificent. So thank you both. It's just a joy to get to know you, Dave, and I've known Patricia for a little bit, so and just wonderful to be here with you. Well, I want to share a lesson with you entitled More Than Enough. Once upon a time, in a galaxy quite near, there was a spiritual community. They were on the shores of Peace Lake. And every summer, the rains would come. And the ground table of the water table would rise. And the toilets would overflow. And the new minister was told, you need to be concerned. This happens every summer. But your office and the restroom is far from the problem. So you don't need to be concerned about this. And this is what I thought. I don't think so. And in very short order, we had that problem fixed. Then a year or so later, we had moved to another building that was on the campus. And the rains came again. And the roof began to leak. And I could see it in the eyes of the people. They were thinking, it's going to be a long time before we can raise the money to fix that roof. And I thought to myself, I don't think so. And so I stood up on a Sunday morning with an umbrella in my hand, a microphone in my hand, and I said, it's going to be difficult to give a Sunday lesson in the gesture because I'm going to be holding this umbrella because the roof is leaking. Because what I was seeing in people's eyes was there's not enough. Or more tragically, you can imagine a congregation thinking, we're not enough. And so I stood up and said what I said, and you know that within 10 days, we had the money to fix that roof. Because this is the truth. There is more than enough. And you are more than enough. I am more than enough. We are more than enough. But we believe lies. There are prosperity lies, things that are rampant within human consciousness that just aren't true. And one of the lies is that there's not enough. And the other is that we're not enough. And someone has to stand up and say, I don't think so. And that can begin to change everything because someone stands up to declare such a thing. So I'd like you to say with me, I don't think so. Want to say that? I don't think so. Now, an affirmation or a statement like that, you just can't say that. It's just not an affirmation you say. You've got to get your attitude on in order to say something like that, don't you? So it's kind of like that kid we saw earlier. I don't think so. So you want to say that again with me? I don't think so. Exactly. I don't think so. Go be a preacher one of these days. Well, you know, one of the great mysteries of prosperity surrounds the idea of needs. We have a tendency to believe that God fulfills needs. That in some way a need is an avenue through which God's presence and power and source and supply can flow. And it's just not true. It's not the way the universe works. We think it's the way it works, that there's a need and God fulfills it or flows through it to fill it. But that's not the way it works. Example, world peace. There's been a need for world peace for thousands of years. And here we are, and we don't have it yet. If God could fulfill that need, it would have been done a long time ago. It's just not the way the universe works, because this is the way it works. What God can do, God is doing. You know that statement? You know who said that? Joel Goldsmith. He was a Christian scientist who transcended that religion. What God can do, God is doing. So if I was sitting where you're sitting right now, I'd probably have two questions on my mind. One would be, what is it that God does? That would be one. And the other question I would be asking, well, exactly how is it that needs are fulfilled? Because I have needs, and there are needs all throughout the world. So exactly how does that take place? And before we're done today, we will answer that question. But what is it that God is doing? That can be answered in one word. You know what that word is?
Everything.
Being. God is being your source. God is being love, being strength, being wisdom, being peace. That's the truth. Here's the question, and you may not like it. What are you doing? That's the question. Because God is doing for you everything that God can do. But what are you doing? Feeling insecure, thinking negatively, believing that there's not enough, or that you're not enough. These are some of the things that humanity holds in consciousness. The truth is this: God needs you. You're part of the creation. And the way needs are fulfilled, we are the avenue through which that takes place. Not just as a walking around a normal human being that may be thinking negativity. No, it requires a human being who is attuned to the infinite, to the presence of God. And whenever that occurs, there's an avenue through which Spirit can then begin to pour itself into our lives and into the world. So, how's world peace going to take place? It's going to move through us. That's how it's going to happen. God is being peace. The question is, what are we doing? That's the answer. And so we've got some of these lies. There's not enough. We're not enough. We're going to have to release those and let those go. We need a new vision in order to be able to move forward. I'll give you an example. Jesus was with his disciples. They were in an area where there were farming taking place. But I think it's wintertime. And he's with them. The fields are barren. And he stands before his disciples, sweeps his hand across the horizon and the fields, and he says, "Behold, the fields are white unto harvest." But they're not white unto harvest. They're barren. But we need a new vision, because what Jesus saw was potential and possibility. So let me ask you, when you believe there's not enough, what do you do? The answer? You hold on to what you have. You hoard what you have. You fear tomorrow. Why? Because come tomorrow, there's not enough. If you believe you're not enough, what do you do? Not much. Little. You give little. Because you judge by appearances. The appearance is when you give something, you actually create lack. That's the way it appears, isn't it? You have it, and then you give it, and it's gone. Let me illustrate. Who deserves a $50 bill? I think this was the first hand I saw go up. Let's take a look at this. Is that a real $50 bill? And yeah, we got Grant on there, and that's yours. That's how prosperity works. Aren't you glad you came today? Okay. There you go. So, I've got this little illustration. I've got a bunch of questions for you. First question is this. Why wasn't every hand up? I said, who deserves $50? If you don't think you deserve $50, how will you ever experience the richness of the kingdom of God? You won't. It doesn't work that way. And so part of this is one of the challenges and barriers to prosperity is we don't feel we deserve. And some of you in this room now, you realize I could have held that $50 bill up until somebody had to prop my arm up because you never would have raised your hand. And that's a point of growth for you. Second question. Who demonstrated prosperity? You know, the mainstream in New Thought is you demonstrate when you get something. You get healed, you get a job, you get a sum of money, you get a new car. That's the mainstream, and I say to you that we need a new vision, because this is what demonstration is. You demonstrate not by what you get, you demonstrate by giving. And so, sir, what was your name? What's your name?
Tad.
Tad. So, the mainstream of thought is that Tad demonstrated $50. Not true. Not in a new vision. I demonstrated $50. The demonstration isn't getting, it's giving. Okay? Another question. Do I have less because I gave that $50? You look at my assets, etc., and I gave $50. So, do I have less now because of that?
No.
Yeah. When you judge by appearances, I have less. But maybe, just maybe, we'll see. Part of the new vision is that I don't have less. Maybe I have more. How about this question? Am I less because I gave a $50 bill? No. I don't feel less. I think I feel more because I've done that. One more question for you around this illustration. What did I just do? Now, you don't get to leave here today until you answer the question. What did I just do? Let me give you a hint. Any farmers here? Gardeners?
Seed.
Gardeners?
Planted
Yes.
seed.
I planted seeds. That's right. Farmers, gardeners, some of the most prosperous people in the world. Why? Because they know the nature of seeds. Something tiny that appears dead, and yet out of it comes an abundant harvest. You could hold a tiny seed in your hand, and it could, given time, feed thousands of people. You could hold it in your hand and feel the weight of 1,000 harvests. Yes?
The same thing could be said of teachers.
For
Teachers.
teachers, yes. Yeah, they're planting seeds all the time. That's the way it works. You see, in my case, I plant seeds nearly every day of my life. You know what I do? We have in Unity, actually I don't think they have them anymore, but I sure have mine, something called a prosperity bank. Came about around the Depression time, and Unity wanted to help people, and there were people, giving people an opportunity to pay for subscriptions and so forth. And what you do is you take a coin and you hold it in your hand and you bless it. In my case, to a grateful giving heart. And I bless it, and then I release it. And I let that prosperity bank fill up, and then I take it to the church. So nearly every day of my life, I'm planting seeds. I'm blessing and I'm giving as a powerful part of life. For me, prosperity is not a line, it's a circle. It's not a lake in which I dip into it and drink. It's a river, and it flows through me. And I'm the one, you're the one, that has to initiate the flow. That's the way it works. What God can do, God is doing. We are, in the state of consciousness of oneness with God, we are an avenue through which the supply and all that God is can flow. So we give not to a need, we give because we need to give. And when you give, the hand is open. When you don't, it's closed. It's a fist. And this fist can strike, it can pound, it can be shaken to the heavens, but it cannot receive. But when it gives, then it can receive. Powerful, isn't it? And so we have our responsibilities of what lies ahead for us. Let me tell you, the happiest I have ever been in my life is when I have given. I want to give you two examples. They are profoundly different from one another and profoundly the same. The first is this. A number of years ago, 2004, there was a friend, someone I really didn't know that well, has become a great friend. His name is Carl Ozier, and he worked at our world headquarters. And he had kidney difficulties, and his kidneys were failing. You know, cry went out throughout the unity movement for someone that might donate a kidney to Carl. And so Nancy and I talked, and we both volunteered. And 3 or 4 other people volunteered as well. And so they started doing the blood tests and things, and Nancy and I we lived pretty close by. And I was chosen to get that kidney. And I was ecstatic with joy. I was bouncing off the walls of the house. And Nancy, my beautiful wife, was saying to me, "What is wrong with you?" Because I was just so jubilant. But that's what it was. And there's so much to the story. Let me just tell you a little bit. I don't know if you know the way the unity movement came into being, but it came with a healing. Myrtle Fillmore had TB. And part of the illumination that came from within for healing for her was to talk to the cells of her body. That she's an intelligent being. There's intelligence happening in the cells. And so they ought to be able to communicate. And so she talked to them, blessed them. And there was this resurgence of life, and she was healed. Carl and I, we took a page out of that book. And so what I started doing, knowing that my kidney was an intelligent thing, it did intelligence things, I started talking to it. And I said to it, it was going to be leaving my body. It was going to be going into another man's body, and that this person was someone that was serving the needs of the people in the world. And this would enable him to be able to serve with energy and vitality. And so I was having those daily conversations with my kidney. Carl, on the other hand, was talking to his body. And he was saying to it, you know, the stranger, this other kidney is going to be coming in. But you need to be able to embrace it because it's going to be helpful for me. And so the day of the operation came, and I went first. Nancy was there. Carl was sitting with Nancy. And so I, had the operation, and then midway through, or about the time that ending up, Carl goes. And he's getting ready. And the interesting thing is when a kidney is all plumbed in, let us say, it usually takes 24 to 48 hours to get the thing going. Because the kidney looks around and says, where am I? This is not where I've been. What happened to me? Well, in this case, when they plug my kidney into Carl, it already knew what was supposed to happen. Guess what it did? It started working immediately. Instantly, it started working. And I talked to Carl just a week or so ago. Nancy and I, he lives in Maine now. We're going up there on a travel trailer. We're going to spend some time with Carl. So he's a good friend, to say the least. So that's one story. And I was ecstatic with joy. Let me tell you another one that happened before this one with Carl. We were on vacation down in Myrtle Beach in that area. And it started raining, so like everybody else, we went to the mall. So I'm in a sporting goods store, and I'm wandering around because I play sports and love all that. And there's a boy there, little guy, maybe 10 or 11, and he's got a soccer ball. And he's going to buy the soccer ball. And so he's got it on the counter. He's reaching in his pocket, he's bringing out crumpled dollar bills and change, and it's all laying over there on the counter. But he miscalculated something. He didn't have enough money. Forgot the tax or whatever. And so I saw what was taking place. So I took out my wallet, took out a dollar bill, and I gave it to the clerk, and I said, finish the transaction. When I released the dollar bill, I was so filled with joy that I was shaking. I once did a Sunday lesson called Trembling in God's Presence. It was all based on that experience. And then I was off down looking at whatever I was looking at. The kid had his ball, and he ran by me, and he said, thanks. And then he was gone. To this day, I wonder if that was really a kid. I wondered if it was some angel unaware. And it was an opportunity for me to see what in the world would I really do. But you see how the same and how different these two stories are? They are acts of giving. One is a body part. The other is a dollar bill. And each one gave an incredible, incredible joy. So you have time for one more story?
Yeah.
I wrote a book called Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. Very popular prosperity book. And in there's a chapter that's called Rites of Passage of Giving. And as a minister for 40-some years, I have looked at the patterns and the process that people go through in their giving, me included. So there are 5 steps that were in that book and in that particular chapter. But then when we were in Fort Myers, which is where we live, the church there, we were building a new sanctuary, $2.1 million for that sanctuary. And I learned something new about prosperity called radical generosity. And let me tell you the way it works. And it works, as I'll mention here in a minute, not just with prosperity, but with any spiritual breakthrough in your life. Here's what was happening. We were having a bunch of meetings, 15, 16, 17 meetings. Nancy and I were in each one of them. And we would come together and we would talk about how much unity meant to us. And we talked about the legacy of love that was going to be there for many, many years after we were all gone. And we talked about giving and so forth. And after every meeting, I would ask Nancy, well, what's our number? What are we going to give? And I want to tell you, our number actually increased tenfold before we actually came to the point of what we were going to begin to share with this. But what happens is this. When you begin to think about what you're going to give in this way, your ego says, I don't think so. And it says, there's not enough. And you're not enough. And don't you know that giving actually creates lack? That when you give something, you don't have it anymore? Don't you know that? That's what it was saying. Then it said, if you give in the way that you're thinking of giving, you won't be able to have the retirement that you want to have. So all this, so we're pushing forward into new territory for us, and that ego is doing what? It is pushing back. Jesus talked about that. One of the Beatitudes, blessed are you when men revile and persecute you for my name's sake. For my name's sake means for the sake of spiritual growth, breaking through, discovering who you are. And the men that persecute you aren't necessarily of the world. The persecution takes place within. The thoughts that said, there's not enough. You're not enough. It creates lack. You're not going to have the retirement that you want to have. And so that's the persecution that takes place. And Jesus is saying, you're blessed when this occurs. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But when the ego is doing all that it's doing, what do? What do you say? You know what you say. I don't think so. That's what you say. I don't think so. Because you are on the edge, the precipice of a breakthrough into a state of consciousness of mind and heart that you have never been in before in your life. And that's true of every single situation in your life where there's that pushback. Whether it has to do with forgiveness and love, or whether it has to do with prosperity, or making decisions, whatever it is, you get that pushback and it tells you that's what you want. You want the pushback because it says to you, you're close. You're right there. It's a defining moment. A breakthrough is in front of you. And so that's what we felt. Lots of us felt that. And so what you do, in this case of the radical generosity, you make a decision, I'm just going to give a little bit more. And when that happens, you know what occurs? A peace just floods your being. You don't even know how you're going to do what you declared you're going to do. You don't know. But you've made the commitment. And the peace just floods your being. And you end up in another state of mind and heart that you have never been in before in your life. And you know that there's more than enough. That you are more than enough. And so, of all the things I've said to you today, I hope that you are not sitting there thinking, I don't think so. That would not be good. Because the truth is, there's more than enough. That you're more than enough, and more than that, you are created to be the avenue through which that which God is appears in this world. That's why you come here. You may do many things in your life. You're raising the kids, you're interacting with the grandkids, and you have this job, and you don't. Well, it doesn't matter. You're here to be that avenue. So don't ever forget, you're more than enough. And there is more than enough. And so it is. Amen. God bless you, friends. God bless you.